right, heathens, we finally got weapons. The follow-up to Zach Cregger's debut movie Barbarian, which we are big fans of on this channel. And much like that movie, Weapon starts as a movie that could be worked through pretty straightforward and gives it a massive shift in the middle that very few people can pull off. Sure, Barbarian might start as two people who accidentally booked the same Airbnb and the potential danger that presents, but then it does what it does. Check out my video for that if you're unaware. And this is similar. We got a bunch of kids in a class going missing at the same time in the middle of the night, loads of ways it could go, so what movie will this journey take us on? And yes, I do have a novelty shirt for the occasion. Sorry it's so late, the video's so late, but novelty shirt. But Weapons is kinda terrifying. It's chilling and ominous and at other times silly and hilarious, but it's the kind of uncomfortable hilarity where you're like equal parts shocked and amused. Like, oh my god, what's happening? It's also a movie I think people can have a lot of fun interpreting in different ways and all the different elements, and Cregger seems totally fine to let people take from it what they will without confirming a damn thing. This is a movie that I like the more I think about it, the more I watch it. I think it's very unique within the horror genre. It has some similar vibes to Longlegs while still being quite different than that and more satisfying in certain ways, in my opinion. I do think there's some really strong ideas introduced here on the ways we treat each other, on the way we treat kids, the things we do to avoid guilt and blaming ourselves for things that we might maybe have to take blame in, and I think those could have been taken a little bit further, but it's still a fun ride. Either way, whatever Zach Cregger is cooking up, I'm gonna be there day one to see it because it's certainly always an experience. But before we get into those deep spoilers, I'm just gonna go through some of the base premise of the movie and the different things that I liked on that level. So more specific on that idea that I mentioned earlier, Weapons is about an entire class of elementary students going missing after running out of their houses at 2:17 a.m. The entire class, except for one kid. What follows is a wacky little tale of public panic, a community looking for answers, misplaced blame, and anger. Trying to make sense of a tragedy, all being told in a non-linear fashion between character perspectives until we get to the conclusion. We get perspectives of the teacher, the parent, the cop, the last remaining kid, and a few other faces of the community to flesh out the story. And while Cregger will neither confirm nor deny many of the ideas people have about this movie, he has said that the inspiration came following the death of his fellow Whitest Kids You Know star Trevor Moore, who fell from his balcony in 2021. A very abrupt death that likely led to a lot of confusions amongst friends, which we definitely see explored in this movie. So in processing that grief, we get Weapons. And while there are some seemingly very clear allegories and real-life connections to be made with this movie, Cregger has pushed back on it intentionally being a vessel to anything specific, maintaining that it was more just him vomiting his feelings up onto a page. A stream of consciousness built out of an idea of a bunch of kids going missing and where that would take him, what would happen to the community, what's the end result. Apparently doing a lot of transcendental meditation like David Lynch used to, taking whatever his subconscious gives him and just putting it on the page, making a mess of characters, imagery, and emotions that then just has to get turned into a coherent script at some point, which I think is pretty cool, and I'm really glad he was able to channel his grief into something that's garnered him so much success. The performances in this movie were fantastic. I know the whole movie was essentially recast outside Austin Abrams because of the strike that happened, which landed us the incredible performance of Josh Brolin as the father of a missing child, which honestly I can't imagine anybody pulling off better than him in this movie. We got Alden Ehrenreich as a local cop, and Julia Garner, who I will admit I was initially a little bit bummed to see cast because I'm a huge fan of Renat Rance, who was the original person cast, but Garner nails the role of the school teacher that so much of the blame is being put on, who cares so much, maybe too much, but also has so many of her own demons and alcohol struggles. Amy Madigan is also fantastic, but I can't go into specifics yet. Every character in this manages to have a unique personality and stories outside the direct issue of the missing kids, but not in a way that makes it feel like it's scattered or disconnected. Everyone reacts to situations in a way that feels real to their character, even when things start venturing outside the bounds of normal. There's just this kinetic energy to it all while we pull back each layer to get some kind of answer. It's got great lore while absolutely still concerning itself with problems of the mundane, and I'm just happy to live in a world where this was able to be made the way it was and be extremely successful. Now, someone in this movie is going to present themselves as being a little unwell, and I gotta say, it sure would have been easier for them to turn to today's sponsor, ZocDoc, than what they ended up doing. Back again to help keep you healthy, ZocDoc is a free app and website that lets you search and compare high-quality, in-network doctors and instantly book an appointment with the one that fits your needs. From dental to mental, eye care, general health, and so much more, ZocDoc gives you access to appointments with more than 100,000 healthcare providers across nearly every specialty, all with a collection of verified reviews to make your decision that much easier. As someone who travels a lot for work, planning ahead for appointments can be a challenge. I've been knee-deep in a film festival getting a telehealth call for something from a different country, or finding out that I missed a dentist appointment that I scheduled 6 months ago that they can't rebook me in for another 3 months. With ZocDoc, I'm easily able to see a variety of doctors, dentists, optometrists, and more available near me. Then book an appointment often in just 24 to 72 hours from the booking booking, and sometimes it's even same day. Like, I couldn't get a hold of my family doctor in time to get a pretty essential refill before I had to go on a trip, so I just loaded up ZocDoc and had a variety of different doctors to choose from and had it dealt with the same day. So now I have a reliable dentist, optometrist, and easy access to medical care in more urgent situations. And the best part for all my fellow phone haters, ZocDoc gives you access to your chosen specialists' available appointments online, so you can just pick the time that works best for you and instantly book it in. I know it's harder to take care of your health when you're out on your own, but your tooth shouldn't have to start hurting before you seek out dental care. Let ZocDoc help you! So stop putting off your health and go to ZocDoc.com/AmandaTheJedi or click the link in the description down below to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. So to make it clear, we're going to be hitting all the spoilers. I am going to ruin the movie for you if you haven't seen it, but I'll go over a lot of what I think things mean in this movie in the final section of the video after we get through the general events. We're going to build into it. So obviously this movie is setting up as just as much of a mystery as it is a horror. What happened to the kids? Why did they all run out of their houses at the same time? We will find out where they all went before the movie ends, but the what and the why will still take time to flesh out. And the movie begins where Cregger's consciousness originally took him, the voice of a young girl telling a true story about her town. 17 kids Naruto running out of their houses at 2:17 and disappearing without a trace. A very specific running style to let you know that this isn't just a group of kids choosing to leave on their own. There is something sinister happening. Imagery all being shown to us as this little girl narrates like it's a campfire story. You won't find anything on the news about it, but if you ask the people around town, they'll all tell you the same story that she is. Love a movie that starts with some lore! As mentioned before, outside the narration, the movie is split up into a handful of different people's perspectives, bringing us back to earlier parts of the story as we hit each new person to see what was going on from their perspective. Starting with Justine Grady, new teacher walking into class to find all the students missing except for one boy named Alex Lilly. And the whole thing seems impossible. None of the kids in the other classes were told anything about running away. Alex had no answers as to why he was the only one who didn't do it when all the others did. Eventually pushing everyone to Justine, the only other person directly connected to each of the kids, but she also has no answers. But after a month with no sign of the kids and the hostilities rising, the blame on her from the parents just starts to intensify. And I think that's interesting for a lot of different tragedies that don't have clear answers. Everyone just really wants to put the blame on someone else, even if they might have some culpability in the matter too. Why didn't the teacher notice? How could no one see this coming? Well, why didn't the parents notice that anything was gonna happen? It's just so many layers down that thread. And the ringleader of the parental rage comes from Archer, a man hellbent on believing Justine must have had something to do with the disappearances because there's just no one else. Then it makes no sense that none of them would have talked about it beforehand, that no one would have seen it coming. Lots of questions I'm sure parents end up having after tragedies, but they just cannot be reasoned with in this situation. And that anger and confusion starts to manifest its way in worse ways, stalking Justine home, making anonymous threats, banging on her door, disappearing faster than should be possible, writing witch on her car. A witch hunt, which is just such a nice little inclusion to where this story is going. Point being, people are pissed and they are willing to make her suffer for it. The hostility is so high that she's forced to take a leave from teaching, which she doesn't really want to take, but we get some insight into her as a teacher that she might have a habit of going over certain professional lines, like giving a kid a ride home from school when a parent doesn't show up, hugging one that's crying. And now she wants to talk to that remaining student, Alex Lilly, which would probably be more for her own benefit than the benefit of the child who's probably extremely confused and feeling very guilty about everything that's happened.
We're the only ones left.
Yeah, I get it. That's a real unique connection, but he's 8 years old. And as good as a teacher as she seems to be, she's definitely not one to let things go and follows the kid home, tries to talk to the parents before realizing that all the windows are papered over. Only a sliver of visibility on the back window because, yeah, she went into the backyard. The whole time I was like, what are you doing? But in that sliver reveals what I assume to be Alex's parents just sitting there in the dark, not moving, looking quite disheveled. I'm on board, this is creepy as hell. When Justine tries to report this, Principal Marcus seems more concerned with the fact that she went to the house over anything that might be happening inside it. So again, the next day, Justine decides to take things into her own hands and tries to talk to Alex, and he just freaks out at her.
I just want to make sure that everything's all right.
Don't follow me!
Which makes her go one step further with plans to stake out the house because there absolutely must be something deeper going on in there. Too bad she's an alcoholic and passed out from drinking a vodka big gulp. And it's while she's passed out in the middle of the night that Alex's mom starts stumbling out of the house in some barely functioning shuffle, then gets inside Justine's car and cuts some of her hair. So right here, I'm already creeped out. That walk was creepy. Everything about this is creepy. I thought she was gonna get stabbed. I'm like, okay, we got some ritualistic stuff going on here if they gotta get someone's hair. Do we have a literal witch hunt on our hands, except they just have the wrong witch. I love a good lore, I love a good supernatural existing in a very grounded world. Before the stakeout night, she does end up having a pretty intense nightmare of walking into her class with all the students, heads face down on the desks until Alex pulls his head up to reveal this horrific clown makeup, before getting jump scared by a redheaded lady on her ceiling wearing like 90s workout clothing. You may have noticed that when Alex is being interviewed, the woman next to him had the same red hair. So something is definitely going on with Alex if the papered windows weren't enough of a sign, and if some, crazy lady wasn't like screaming in her nightmares. It's all creepy as hell, and I assume she's being sent these visions in her dreams because she's getting too close to the source of the disappearance. And that's where we leave Justine, but before that stuff goes down, we get introduced to Alden Ehrenreich's character Paul, a local cop, and Justine's ex. There's definitely the vibe that they used to have a very toxic relationship filled with too much alcohol because he's currently trying to be sober, which gets tossed out the window when he and Justine hook up, leading to Paul's wife beating the shit out of her in a liquor aisle because apparently they weren't on a little break. The whole town really wants her dead for so many different reasons.
He said you weren't together! Liar!
That brings us to Archer on the day of that parent-teacher meeting, a man devastated by the loss of his son, angry at everyone, including himself, with nowhere to put that energy. To the point that it's starting to affect his work, like he's ordering the wrong color paint for his house, a paint that seems to match what was used to vandalize Justine's car. And while there's no direct sign that she's involved, he's done all kinds of digging on her. He knows she's had a DOI, that she was fired for inappropriate behavior at her last job, except it was with a faculty member. But certainly nothing to suggest she'd have a way or desire to vanish 17 kids at the exact same time, but it's the only thing he has to grab onto. Because outside that, it's just his guilt, the things he feels like he failed to do. That night, he also has a super vivid nightmare watching his son run away, trying to follow him, bringing up the most striking imagery from the movie, the floating AR-15 or some kind of assault rifle with the time they all ran away, floating in the sky, seemingly really pushing this towards a certain type of school violence, but Cregger maintains that this was just an idea he had and put in the movie, but it's obviously very easy to take so much of what's happening in this movie as an allegory for school violence, culpability, placing blame in other areas, and never getting down to the root problem to solve it. And apparently 217 is the exact number of votes to pass an assault rifle ban, a bill that never actually went into effect. So it's easy to see why people are building those direct connections and then feel like the rest of this movie might not play into that enough with how serious that topic is. I absolutely still think there's ways it works very well for how serious that is, but we'll get to that later. But I will say, obviously it's easy to see where people are getting all these direct connections, but 217 is also the room number in The Shining, and that's what Cregger said he's paying homage to with that time. But again, like he said, whatever you take out of this movie can apply to whether he meant it or not. I think Brolin in particular has expressed a lot of his thoughts on this being kind of a way to express some issues around school violence and shootings. Obviously, it's a little hard to stay more ambiguous with a floating gun in the sky, so I get the critiques. But this scene goes on to have Archer desperately trying to apologize to his son Matthew for not telling him that he loved him enough, for not being present enough. Brolin said that Archer had a very rigid idea of masculinity, which likely affected his ability to get close to his son, and it's only after he's lost him that he realizes that that was a mistake. There's nothing more manly than letting your kids know you love them. But when he peels back the sheet to see his kid, it's that same clown-looking lady, which to me seems pretty clear that anytime you start getting closer to what might be happening to the kids, you'll start getting tormented by whatever this thing is. Because he's actually been trying to triangulate where the kids would have run off to based on security footage, which is where we get our Justin Long cameo, not as abrupt and involved as he was in Barbarian, but it brings me joy all the same. He's still really hung up on Justine's involvement though, but his perspective comes to an end after confronting her at a gas station when the very kind principal comes running at Justine in a crazed fury, arms out exactly like the kids. So more points to something ritualistic in nature. So fun. Where will we go? Well, for now, we're gonna go to Paul's perspective, who seems to have himself in a bit of a jam. So we know he was lying to Justine about being in an off patch with his partner, but he seems to be pretty stuck in that situation because the sheriff is his wife's dad. Oh, buddy, you're fucked. I want to clarify that him hooking up with Justine has not happened yet at this point of his perspective, but this is a man who feels very stuck. Apparently he's supposed to start having a kid. He just seems extremely annoyed with his wife.
Love you. Jesus Christ.
But it all slides into my favorite moment of the movie when he comes across local addict James, played by Austin Abrams, chases him down, asks if he has anything sharp in his pockets before he gets stabbed by a used needle, and instantly clocks him. A fairly valid reaction, all things considered, but not when you're a cop facing your dash cam. So he just tries to make an agreement with him. He won't bust him for the attempted break and enter as long as he never sees James anywhere near the police station to report it. So it's after all that stress and panic, having to tell his father-in-law boss about it, worrying about losing his job if anyone else finds out, hating his relationship, that Justine ends up messaging him to meet up. Old habits and all that. Both turning to each other in times of stress like an extension of their addiction. And we know what happens from here. He ends up drunk, they hook up, he stumbles home where his wife is waiting for him, very quickly figuring out what he must have done. So that agreement he has with the father-in-law to keep the punch quiet as long as no report gets made might be out the window when Daddy Dearest finds out. So when he walks out of the station and sees James coming across the street, he just goes nuts chasing him down. Bringing us to James's perspective, where after getting punched, he ends up at the Lily's house, assuming that they're out of town because of all the newspapers in the driveway, making them a great place to rob, and just climbs on in and gets a much better look at the parents in his complete trance, completely disheveled. Now, because he's such a dedicated addict and thief, when he realizes that they just aren't moving or reacting to anything, he just continues his heist. Even when he hears noises from upstairs, he just keeps going. We love a man with passion and dedication until he hits the basement, where all those kids are just standing there lined up in a trance before one whips its head around at him. Almost ends up attacked by the parents once whatever's done this to everyone realizes he's there. I assume they can see through the eyes, and the kid whipped around like that. It's very scary. Crazy stuff, great visuals, super creepy. They're just chilling there like droids waiting to be activated.
Activate the droids.
So that's why James made his way back to the station. Well, not before he goes to sell the stolen goods for drug money. He actually only reached out to the cops about it when he realized there was a $50,000 reward for information. And unfortunately, it's just not a tip they're willing to take in over the phone.
I really don't like police stations. You know, they just kind of freak me out. I'm phobic.
So he takes off running from Paul and then sees the clown lady in the woods, which had two options here. One is that he got so close to what's happening behind the scenes that she can torment him even when he's awake. Or two, she was actually there and just trying to find a personal item and maybe some hair to weaponize against him. But he starts hiding away, horrified of her, and then accidentally stabs Paul in the face with needles, thinking it was a her, only avoiding a shotgun to the face because he says he knows where the kids are. And if he's telling the truth, this could really smooth things over for Paul. Who cares that he punched an addict? He's a town hero. So he wanders into the house and doesn't come out for hours, and when he does, it's in a frenzy to drag James into the house. Bringing us to Principal Marcus. Rolling back to the moment he gets the call from Justine about the weird things she saw at the Lily house. And while he is more frustrated that she went there, he does agree to talk to the parents and do some kind of wellness check, but instead of them, Aunt Gladys shows up, the clown lady herself. And she'll quickly realize that Marcus is going to be an issue for whatever she's doing with Alex's parents and the kids, and has to take him out of the equation and maybe have a two birds with one stone situation when she realizes that it was likely Justine that put in the report. So Gladys uses the good nature of Marcus's husband to infiltrate her way into the house, where there was actually a nice little nod to the Whitest Kid You Know skit with a hot dog platter, so that was nice to see. Too bad tragedy's about to befall, because what isn't nice is that the second she gets into the house, she starts whipping up some kind of witchcraft on him. And this is one of those moments in the movie that is simultaneously absurd and uncomfortable and horrific with how quick it goes. One minute she's asking for some water in a bowl, and the next minute she's got control of them. So the movie then shows us that the source for power all seems to come from this tree, and we get a really great demonstration of how it all works. By wrapping a personal item from Marcus around a piece of the tree and imbuing it with her blood, she can then completely put him in a trance. Then by wrapping his husband's hair around that same stick and snapping it, Marcus just bashes his skull in with his own skull, only stopping when she drops those pieces of the stick into some water. Super brutal stuff here, but absolutely explains how she could get 17 kids to leave their homes at the exact same time. And as we know, she follows this up by setting him off to find Justine, only stopping when he gets killed by a car. Seems like you gotta destroy the brain. Now, thankfully, in the insanity, Archer realizes that Justine probably has nothing to do with the kids disappearing because Marcus was running at her the same way the kids were. Then the two of them realize together that the area that the kids seem to be running triangulated right on the Lily house. Bringing us to Alex's perspective. Starting before the disappearance even happened, to Aunt Gladys showing up to town, and Aunt apparently none of them really know but feel compelled to help because she's family. And she seems pretty unwell and might not be around for much longer. Except when Alex makes his way home later that day after his dad didn't show up to get him, his parents are both already in this weird trance, and Aunt Gladys is starting to look a lot better. Now, one element this movie has shown to us a few different times are parasites. They're learning about parasites in class before the kids go missing. Marcus and his husband are watching a documentary about parasitic cordyceps. So that's what Aunt Gladys is doing. She's a parasite, and she's using the life force of others to rejuvenate herself or just keep herself going. And if Alex doesn't go along with whatever she wants, she can make his parents do literally anything she wants, including kill themselves. Horrifying for a kid to watch his parents fork themselves in the face with no reaction. I'll go into more detail later on about how all that was inspired around Cregger's own experience with an alcoholic parent. We'll We'll get to it later, but it doesn't seem like the parents are doing quite enough to satisfy Gladys's needs, which is when she asks Alex to do her a favor to get something from every one of the students in his class so she can get better.
And if she got better, you'd go back home?
I love that she actually looks hurt that he doesn't want her around, like as if she doesn't understand why he wouldn't want her there. I somehow doubt she ever planned to actually leave, but kid's a genius. Instead of trying to find a way to take something from every individual without them noticing, he just grabs all their name tags as fast as possible, giving her the ability to quickly and easily get them all to her in one go. Now, you will remember that Alex and his dad seemed to be getting interviewed by the police early on in the movie, but apparently they got through that by Gladys claiming that Alex's father had a stroke, which they don't end up looking into any deeper, probably just because they're more concerned about the fact that a bunch of kids just went missing. And when the detectives come to search the house, she's just had the kids hidden somewhere else, because again, she can control all of them and make them do whatever she wants. And the fact that Alex is acting a little bit weird isn't going to seem that unusual because, you know, a bunch of his friends just went missing. I also really like the detail that Archer's kid is Alex's bully. I feel like we can talk about that a little bit more. I think there's a couple ways you can take it. I'm leaning more towards one way. I'll discuss it in the end. But Alex's life just becomes going to school, buying a shit ton of soup cans every day to feed everyone and just hoping this crazy lady will actually leave like she promised. But at this point, it's been over a month and there's no sign that she's going to go anywhere. Until one day he comes home to her saying that they're going to leave town the next day, as in both of them, not just her. She's going to take him with her. She even seems to have his parents standing guard outside her door with a salt barrier that he can't cross, so I'm assuming that they'll be in attack mode if anybody does cross that line. I love a good classic supernatural salt barrier. And this is where the perspectives start to merge. Justine and Archer end up beckoned into the house by Paul in a very creepy way, feeling very it, which is obviously just a trap to get them in the house, so they end up attacked by Paul and James. And again, ominous and so hilarious. Justine's just fighting for her life using a potato peeler on Paul's face. Icky! She's got to shoot him in the head with his own gun for it to stop. While Archer is just launching James around the house like a rag doll that just keeps getting up for more, which was just so incredibly entertaining. But that just gets him knocked through the basement door where he finally sees all the kids until Gladys jump scares him and uses his necklace to take control of him to kill Justine. But thankfully, while all this is happening, Alex realized that things might have been coming to a head and he absolutely did not want to go anywhere with that woman thing. So he crosses the barrier to try to talk to his parents, and yeah, they go feral, but he ends up with Gladys's tree and he's watched her use it so many different times that he knows how to do it himself and unleashes all those kids on her.
Oh no.
Wow, man, the kid got pushed into doing literal blood magic. Intense. Do you guys get it? They literally weaponized the children. And this is the most absurd, hilarious, and disturbing moment of this movie as all these kids are just hunting her down, crashing through people's homes, stampeding upon her before literally ripping her apart. Like a zombie movie, obviously there's been a lot of just allegorical signs that they kind of start acting like zombies when they're under control, but this is like it just flips us into 28 Days Later zombies. I know, they're not zombies in that, they're infected. You know what I mean. And the second she's dead, a very painful death might I add, the effects wear off on everyone and Archer gets his son back. Cutting us right back to that campfire notation to make sure we know that Alex's parents essentially need full-time care now, and that some of the kids are just starting to talk again after 2 years. So being under control that long-term really does break your brain. This is a very bittersweet ending, if there's any sweetness here at all. The end. So yeah, that is just a real experience of a movie. I can easily see why the setup might work more than the payoff for some people, but it's clear that it's really working for a lot of people, including myself. I feel like a lot of other movies would have just gone down the typical thread line of Justine being the one to save the day at the end, or just have everyone in general lose. What we get is a much more bittersweet ending where the force of evil might be gone, but the effects will always linger on. Like, yeah, it could be cool to explore this premise in a way where you never see the great evil causing the horror, but I like that this movie gets so blatant in showing what's happening, her method of doing it, but then leaving so much of the deeper meaning up to personal interpretation. In the end, the title really is just how people can be weaponized, how you can weaponize ourselves and weaponize each other. When something horrible happens, so many people are just looking to place the blame anywhere that isn't themselves until it hits the deepest part of you that's just desperately trying to avoid the guilt. Which again, I think is perfectly conveyed to us through Archer. If you're going down the gun violence avenue, which is obviously very easy to do, the way the kids are essentially shells of who they used to be, taking years for even some of them to start talking again, feels like a pretty big comparison to PTSD. How going through something like that is going to take a core piece of you and the world just doesn't seem willing to do anything about it. Honestly, the biggest thing that goes against that narrative is that in the movie, they close the school for a month after the kids go missing, and I think at this point they might just give you off till the end of the week if you go through a tragedy. I think a lot of the world is sadly desensitized or numb to a lot of violence against and inflicted by children, and this ending really takes that to the limit to get a reaction out of us. Obviously, a lot of the finger pointing, blaming the teacher for not seeing it coming when the parents didn't see it coming either, all things we've absolutely seen happen in situations of school violence or when kids hurt themselves. I know some people think that Matthew being Alex's bully shows a lot of that too, as in Alex would have been the kid getting revenge, but I think that just plays a lot more into Matthew's relationship with his dad, Archer. If he's cold and upholding certain types of ideals of what it means to be a man at home, it's easy to see how that could reflect on a kid being cruel to someone he seems as more sensitive. Rejecting that piece of yourself so hard that you're taking it out on someone else? By the general community reaction, time moving on, the town moving on, but the people affected feeling stuck in time absolutely reflects real life tragedies. Things just going back to status quo to the point that it takes a privacy violation for anyone to realize that something might be really wrong with the kid that didn't disappear. Again, you have Josh Brolin very openly saying that he sees this all as an allegory for school violence and gun violence. The way the kids are just gone in an instant with nothing but questions left. But I do think it ends up being less about the literal act of a shooting itself and more about how society deals with the fallout and exploring that from multiple angles. But a major component, and one that I would argue is even bigger, and it's the one thing that Cregger seems comfortable confirming, is how much of this is a reflection of addiction. They're not being subtle with it at all. Everybody in this movie seems to have some kind of addiction level vice. On top of the shuffle of the people under Gladys's control being reminiscent of a drunken stupor, the way Alex's parents act under control was inspired by Cregger's own experience with his father's alcoholism. Hell, the O in weapons with the triangle inside it seems directly taken from Alcoholics Anonymous. It's definitely not hiding. How one day this thing can come into your home and your parent just suddenly isn't who they used to be, and you might have to start taking care of them without having the tools to fully deal with it or the understanding of what's going on, as this substance just takes away everything they are. Essentially zombifying them in the best case situation and making them violent in the worst. Turning the one place that should always feel safe to you into a horror house where you're just trying to hide from the monsters inside it. Addiction's obviously a major component of this story and how they can try to pull other people down with them to not be alone. You know, you see Justine as an alcoholic and definitely takes it personal when Paul seems to be trying to stay sober. Not to take autonomy away from Paul, he made his choices. You know, his wife recommended that he should be going to meetings still, and he's kind of fallen into the like, hey, if I feel like I'm struggling, then I'll go to meetings, which is usually the sign you're gonna relapse. But the movie's clearly just pointing out the way that you can have these self-destructive bonds with alcohol at the center. And again, I just really like that this is something that can be described as a parasite, because addiction and substance abuse does take so much from you. It is leeching off you. Then you have James, who's just so singularly focused on scoring drugs that he doesn't even properly react to a basement full of kids until he sees a way that it can benefit him to get more drugs. That single-minded drive they all have when getting their addiction sources is very much similar to the way Gladys activates people, so like nothing's gonna distract them from their goals, it's all they care about. So in a way, Gladys actually becomes a representation of addiction and the substance itself, this force that can come in and take away the essence of who someone is, make them hurt themselves, make them hurt each other, keep them so singularly focused on this one horrible thing. And she'll keep taking and taking, much like an addict will never get enough of their substance of choice, and how the addiction will continue to take and take from you. I think a lot of the tragedy in that also ties right into the loss of Trevor Moore. The movie actually released on one of the anniversaries of the death, and 2/17 might have been around the time the incident happened, because it's just linked to having happened at 2:30 in the morning, so there are maybe some parallels there too. But yeah, alcoholism and addiction is the one area Cregger's been very open confirming how it applies to the story, so I think everything else can kind of link itself to being a byproduct of that. And the way people are left affected by her presence in the end feels like a great example of that. Like, even if you take the substance away, remove it from the equation, the effects are still going to be there forever. The damage has been done. Now, in terms of what Aunt Gladys might be on a more literal level for the story, Cregger actually gave Amy Madigan, who again was fantastic in this, I don't think I've mentioned that, 2 options. Told her she didn't have to tell him which one she picked, but she was given 2. One was that she used to be human but tried to heal a life-threatening illness and ended up locked in a cycle of having to keep performing all these horrible spells to stay alive. And the other is that she's not human at all. She's just this kind of creature thing that is trying to simulate what she thinks a human would look and act like, and doing a terrible job of it. And personally, I like that option the most because I'm always a fan of that in movies, and that's exactly what it feels like. The exaggerated makeup, the designer-described deranged grandma clothing choices, the way she interacts with people is just all sinister and unnatural. The one moment where it feels like we get anything genuine from her is when she has that reaction to Alex being like, and then you'll leave? But I just love that Cregger is still pondering what Gladys might actually be. Like, he really is just a vessel for this thing, an idea that's being put to screen. The whole movie obviously has this real modernized grim fairy tale vibe to it, especially with the Pied Piper vibes from lurking the kids out of their homes. But yeah, overall, I was just really compelled by this movie. I love a movie that really makes my brain want to dig in more to what happened, what's going on, what are the motivations. That also ends up being a movie that's satisfying to watch. And that ending is a contender for top of the year with how fun funny and disturbing it is. Though I do understand that if you're really going hard for the allegory to school shootings, that ending might seem a little bit insulting to the heaviness of the topic at hand, but I still think it works. And I really do think that incredulous horror of what's happening feels pretty accurate to our place in the horrors of this world. But that's gonna do it for today's video. Let me know what you guys are thinking down below. Did you love this? Did you hate it? Did anything in the movie resonate with you that maybe I didn't touch on or is outside those two bigger ideas being bopped around for it? I know there's a bunch of other imagery that I didn't go through, like the bell she has, the origin of what the tree might be, but I'm sure people are gonna be theorizing about that for years. So thank you all so much for watching. Thanks as always to my Patreon supporters and YouTube channel members and ZocDoc for sponsoring the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new, leave a like on the video if you're into that kind of thing. All my other social medias are listed down below. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. I'm mostly okay, and we'll catch you all later.